Were you, by any chance, reported missing in January?
No.
Were you on a lake?
No.
On vacation?
No. I was home. I was babysitting my grandson that week. I have pictures. I have videos. My daughter can tell you.
I'm terribly sorry. But according to our records, you're deceased.
I'm sorry?
Our system indicates you passed away 8 months ago.
Well, I'm standing right here.
I understand.
No, you don't. I think your computer has mixed me up with someone else.
I've already checked.
What does that mean?
It means whoever reported your death claimed your body was never found.
For 59 years, Evelyn Brooks had never questioned who she was. She knew the exact street where she'd learned to ride a bicycle. She knew the tiny church in Savannah, Georgia, where she and Thomas Brooks had stood hand in hand 40 years earlier and promised to love each other until death parted them. She knew the scar on her left knee came from falling out of her father's apple tree when she was 9. She knew the sound of her daughter's laugh before she heard it. She knew the smell of cinnamon always reminded her of Sunday mornings with her late husband. There were some things in life a person simply never doubted. Their name, their family, their memories, their own existence. Which was why, on a quiet Tuesday morning in late September, Evelyn walked into the Georgia Department of Driver Services expecting nothing more exciting than renewing her driver's license. She even complained to herself about the wait. The line barely moved. A toddler cried somewhere behind her. An elderly man argued with a clerk about an expired registration that wasn't even handled in that office. Someone's phone kept ringing with the same country song over and over again. It felt wonderfully ordinary. By the time Evelyn reached the counter, she'd already decided she'd stop at the grocery store afterward. Maya had invited her over for dinner that evening. Her grandchildren wanted Grandma's peach cobbler. She smiled just thinking about it. "Good morning," the clerk said politely. "Morning. Renewing today?" "Yes." The young woman accepted Evelyn's license and scanned it into the computer. She smiled at the screen. Then, the smile disappeared. Her fingers stopped moving. She blinked once, looked at the monitor, looked back at Evelyn, then typed something else. Another screen appeared. The clerk frowned. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Could you give me just a moment?" "Of course." Evelyn wasn't concerned. Computers froze. Systems crashed. These things happened. The clerk quietly stood and walked to another desk. She spoke softly to an older supervisor. Both of them looked toward Evelyn. The supervisor nodded once, then walked over carrying a tablet. His voice was calm. "Professional. Mrs. Brooks." "Yes. My name is David. I'm the office supervisor. I just need to verify a few details." "Certainly. Your full name?" "Evelyn Marie Brooks." Date of birth? March 18th, 1967. Current address? Evelyn answered without hesitation. David entered each response, then looked up. His expression had changed. Not suspicious. Not angry.
Confused.
Deeply confused.
"I'm terribly sorry,"
he said carefully. "But according to our records, you're deceased." For a second, Evelyn thought she'd misheard him.
"I'm sorry."
Our records have to follow the official documents. So, until this is corrected, I legally can't renew your license. The words barely registered, because one terrifying question had already planted itself inside Evelyn's mind. If the state believed she had died in January, then who had convinced them she was dead? 20 minutes later, Evelyn sat alone in her car. The engine was off. Her driver's license rested on the passenger seat. Worthless. She picked up her phone and called her daughter.
"Manga."
Maya answered cheerfully. "You still bringing the cobbler?" Evelyn couldn't speak. "Mom, Mama, are you there?" Finally, Evelyn whispered, "They say I'm dead." Silence. Then Maya laughed. Not because it was funny, because the sentence made no sense. "What?" "The state says I died in January." Another pause. Then Maya heard it. Her mother's voice was shaking.
"Nanga."
"Where are you?" An hour later, Maya stormed into the driver services office holding her mother's hand. My mother is obviously alive. I understand your frustration, ma'am, David replied calmly. But please understand ours. He turned the monitor toward Maya. She read the screen once. Then again. Her face slowly lost all color.
No.
David opened another document. The death certificate. Everything matched. Even Evelyn's social security number. Maya stared at the document. Then looked at her mother. Then back again. This isn't possible. We know. So fix it. We can't. What do you mean you can't? The document wasn't created here. It was issued through the State Vital Records Office. Maya's voice rose. So, someone just walks in, declares my mother dead, and nobody checks? David sighed. It doesn't work that way. There are procedures. There are investigations. There are reports. Someone filed enough evidence that the state accepted the death. The room became painfully quiet. Evelyn looked down at the certificate one more time, then noticed something she'd missed before. At the bottom of the page, just above the registrar's signature, was one line, body not recovered. Her heart skipped.
She pointed to it.
What does that mean? David looked, then frowned. It means whoever reported your death claimed your body was never found. Evelyn's breathing became uneven. So, no one actually found a body?
No.
No one proved I died.
No.
Then how? No one in the room had an answer. But someone somewhere
Did.
And whoever that person was hadn't just stolen Evelyn Brooks' identity. They had erased her existence. That night, Evelyn didn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table with the death certificate spread out in front of her, reading it over and over, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They never did. Maya sat across from her, laptop open, eyes red from crying earlier. Now just tired. Now just determined. Mama, I want to check something.
What?
Your accounts. Evelyn frowned. What accounts? Bank. Retirement. Dad's life insurance policy. If someone filed a death certificate, Maya's voice trailed off. They wouldn't do it for nothing. Evelyn felt something cold settle in her stomach. She hadn't thought about the money. She'd been too busy trying to prove she existed. The next morning, they went to the bank together. The manager, a soft-spoken man named Reggie, pulled up her accounts without hesitation. Everything looks normal, Mrs. Brooks. Evelyn exhaled. Then Reggie kept scrolling.
And stopped.
Actually, there's a request in the system. Filed 6 weeks ago. A request for what? Maya asked. Account closure. Pending final documentation. Reggie turned the screen. Someone submitted a death certificate to freeze and close this account. The transfer was scheduled to complete in 10 days. Evelyn's mouth went dry. Transfer to who? Reggie hesitated. Bank policy. Privacy laws. But he looked at her, really looked at her, a living, breathing woman sitting in front of him, and made a decision. A payable on death beneficiary. Someone named on the account. That's not possible, Evelyn said. The only beneficiary on this account is Thomas. Your husband. He passed 6 years ago. Reggie's fingers moved across the keyboard again. Slower this time. Mrs. Brooks. The beneficiary listed isn't Thomas Brooks. It was updated 4 months ago. To a name I don't recognize. He turned the screen toward her one final time. Evelyn leaned in. Read it once. Then again. A name she had never heard in her life. Daniel Reyes. They sat in the car outside the bank for a long time before either of them spoke. Who is Daniel Reyes? Maya finally asked. I don't know. You've never heard that name? Never. Then how did he get added to your account? Evelyn shook her head slowly. You'd need my social security number for that. My ID. My signature. Someone would need everything. Maya's hands tightened on the steering wheel.
Nah.
Someone's been planning this for months. That afternoon, they drove to the County Vital Records office, 40 minutes outside town. A woman named Patricia pulled the file. Physical copies only, she explained. Older system. Slower to update. She read through it, brow furrowing deeper with every page. This is strange. What is? Evelyn asked. The report of death wasn't filed by a hospital. Wasn't filed by a coroner's office either. It was filed by a private investigator's affidavit, attached to a missing persons case out of Chatham County. Maya leaned forward. Missing persons case? Patricia nodded, still reading. A woman matching your description was reported missing near Tybee Island in early January. Personal belongings found along the shoreline. ID in a bag.
Purse.
Phone. Case went cold after 6 weeks. Presumed drowned. Death certificate issued by request of surviving family. Evelyn's chest tightened. I don't have family in Chatham County. I've never been to Tybee Island in my life. Patricia looked up now, unsettled herself. Someone requested this certificate, Mrs. Brooks. Someone signed as your next of kin. She turned the folder toward them. At the bottom, a signature.
Neat. Practiced.
Confident. Rebecca Brooks. Evelyn stared at the name. Her whole body went still.
Nana.
Maya said, "Do you know her?" Evelyn's voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. Thomas had a sister. I met her twice. At our wedding. And at his funeral. We haven't spoken in 6 years. Her name was Rebecca. That night, Evelyn couldn't stop staring at the framed photo on her mantel. Her wedding day. Thomas in his good suit, grinning like he'd won something. And behind them, barely in frame, a young woman in a pale green dress who had never liked Evelyn. Not once. Not for a single day of the 40 years that followed. Rebecca had wanted the house. Rebecca had wanted the money Thomas left behind. Rebecca had disappeared from every holiday, every hospital visit, every funeral arrangement, the moment it became clear none of it was coming to her. Evelyn had assumed that chapter was closed. She had been wrong. Someone out there had used a stranger's disappearance, a missing woman's belongings on a beach, and a family name no one had bothered to verify, to erase her. And whoever this Daniel Reyes was, he wasn't the one who started it. He was only the one who stood to profit from it. The real question waiting at the end of all this wasn't who Daniel Reyes was. It was how far Rebecca Brooks was willing to go to make sure Evelyn never got her own life back. Maya found him first. It took her less than a day. A name, a city, and a public record search was all it took to build a rough shape of Daniel Reyes. 34 years old. Address in Pooler, just outside Savannah. No criminal record. No obvious connection to Evelyn. No connection to Thomas either. But one thing stood out immediately. His listed occupation. Licensed notary and document processing agent. Mama, Maya said quietly, staring at the screen. He's the one who could have notarized the affidavit. The one Rebecca signed. Evelyn read the words twice before they landed. So, he didn't just benefit from this. He helped build it. They didn't call ahead. They didn't want to give him time to prepare an answer. Daniel Reyes answered his own front door in gym shorts and a faded t-shirt, looking like a man expecting a delivery, not a dead woman. He saw Evelyn's face, and every trace of color drained out of his own. You need to leave, he said immediately, already stepping back. I need answers, Evelyn said. Not a doorstep. I don't know you. You're listed as the beneficiary on my bank account. An account belonging to a woman the state says drowned in January. Daniel's jaw tightened. He glanced past them, toward the street, like he was checking whether anyone else could see this conversation happening. I was told this was legitimate, he said finally. Paperwork. Nothing more. Told by who? Maya asked. He hesitated. Long enough that the answer was obvious before he said it. Rebecca. He let them in. Not out of kindness. Out of the particular exhaustion of a man who has been waiting, quietly, for something like this to finally happen. I met her at a networking event 2 years ago, he explained, sitting across from them at his kitchen table, hands wrapped around a coffee mug he never drank from. She said she processed estate paperwork, insurance claims, death benefit transfers, legitimate work. She paid well. Cash, mostly. I didn't ask a lot of questions. 6 months ago, she brought me an affidavit. Missing persons case, presumed drowned, needed notarization to move the death certificate forward faster. She said the family wanted closure. Wanted it processed quickly, quietly, without a media circus. I didn't think anything of it until she added my name to the account a few months later. He looked up now, and for the first time, something like shame crossed his face. I asked her why. She said it was a thank you. Said the woman had no other family that mattered. Said no one would even notice. Evelyn's voice was flat, controlled in the specific way that comes right before it isn't. I have a daughter. I have grandchildren. I have neighbors who bring me tomatoes from their garden every August. Someone would have noticed. Daniel had no answer for that. Where is she now? Maya asked. Rebecca. Daniel shook his head slowly. I don't know exactly. She travels for work, she said. Different counties. Different cases. Different women? Evelyn asked quietly. The question hung in the kitchen for a long moment. Daniel's face changed, like the thought had genuinely never occurred to him until she said it out loud. I don't know, he said finally. I only ever handled the one file. Yours. That night, Evelyn sat with a legal pad, writing everything down the way she used to when Thomas was still building his business. One column for facts, one column for questions. Missing woman, Tybee Island, January. Belongings found. No body recovered. Case matched to Evelyn's identity through a private affidavit. Rebecca Brooks, notarized by Daniel Reyes. Beneficiary added to Evelyn's account 4 months ago. Account transfer scheduled to complete in 10 days before Evelyn had walked into the DMV and stumbled into her own death by accident. The timeline meant something. 10 more days, and this would have completed quietly. No renewal application. No red flag. No confused clerk named David. Evelyn would have simply ceased to exist on paper while continuing to live her life until the day something, anything, forced the two versions of her to collide. A hospital visit, a mortgage refinance, a simple license renewal on an unremarkable Tuesday. She had almost missed it. And the woman on Tybee Island, whoever she really was, whatever her real name had been, had never had anyone walk into a DMV asking questions on her behalf at all. Evelyn set down her pen. Maya. Yeah. I don't think this is about me. I think I'm just the one who noticed. Maya didn't sleep that night either. She sat up long after her mother had finally drifted off on the couch, laptop glowing in the dark kitchen, scrolling through county records the way some people scroll through nothing at all, half hoping to find something, half praying she wouldn't. She started with the obvious search. Missing women. Coastal Georgia. Presumed drowned. No body recovered. The first result made her stomach drop. A woman named Carol Ann Whitfield, 61 years old. Reported missing near St. Simon's Island the previous spring. Belongings found along the shoreline. Case closed within 2 months. Death certificate issued. Cause of death. Accidental drowning. Maya's hands were shaking by the time she found the second one. Linda Farrow, 58. Missing near Jekyll Island, 18 months earlier. Same pattern. Same phrasing, almost word for word, in the incident report. Belongings found. No body recovered.
Case closed.
Death certificate issued at family's request. By 4 a.m, she had found 4 names. 4 women. All within 100 miles of Savannah. All roughly the same age. All with a death certificate issued off the back of a missing persons case that never produced an actual body. She didn't wake her mother. Not yet. She just sat there, staring at 4 names on a screen, understanding for the first time that whatever this was, it hadn't started with Evelyn. And it almost certainly hadn't ended with her either. In the morning, she laid it all out on the kitchen table. Evelyn read each printout slowly, the way she'd read the death certificate 2 nights earlier, like the words might rearrange themselves into something survivable. They didn't. For women, Maya said quietly, that we've found so far. All around your age. All from small coastal counties, where offices like Patricia's are still working off paper files. All cases that went cold fast and got closed even faster. Evelyn stared at Carol and Whitfield's name for a long time. Do you think they're actually gone? She asked. Or, do you think? She couldn't finish the sentence. Maya finished it for her. Or, do you think someone erased them the same way they tried to erase you? Neither of them said anything for a while. If it's the second one, Evelyn finally said, then somewhere out there, 3 women are walking around with no idea the state thinks they're dead. Just like I didn't. Until something forces it into the light. A license renewal. A bank error. A moment of bad luck that turns out to be the only reason they're still alive on paper at all. They brought everything to Patricia at the Vital Records office the next morning. The 4 names, the pattern, the notarized affidavits that all traced back, eventually, to the same small handful of processing agents. Patricia went quiet as she cross-referenced the files. Then quieter still. These all moved through the same regional office, she said. Different counties. Same clearinghouse for out-of-county filings. Someone processing this many similar cases through one office, over 3 years, without a single flag. She stopped herself. That's not bad luck. That's someone who knew exactly how slow this system moves, and exactly where the gaps were. Maya leaned forward. Rebecca Brooks worked in estate and insurance processing. That's what she told Daniel Reyes. Patricia's expression shifted. That would explain how she knew what would and wouldn't get questioned. She wasn't guessing which offices to target. She used to work near one of them. That single detail was the first real thread they could pull. Patricia found it within the hour. A woman named Rebecca Brooks had, in fact, been employed for 2 years at a private firm contracted to process overflow paperwork for 3 coastal counties, including the one that had handled both Carol and Whitfield's case and Linda Farrow's. Her employment had ended 8 months earlier. Right around the time the patterns seemed to accelerate. Right around the time she'd stopped needing an employer at all, because she'd learned everything she needed to run the scheme on her own. Evelyn stared at the old employee directory photo Patricia pulled up. Rebecca, older now, harder around the eyes than she remembered from the wedding photo on her mantle. But unmistakably the same woman. She's not hiding, Evelyn said quietly. Not really. She's just been careful. Careful people still make one mistake eventually. Maya looked at her mother. And I think her mistake was you. Finding Rebecca's current address took 2 days. Finding the courage to drive there took longer. Patricia couldn't help with this part. This was outside what any office could authorize, so it was Maya who finally tracked her down through an old lease application that still listed Rebecca's employer from the firm she'd left 8 months earlier. A small rental house. 40 minutes inland, away from any of the coastal counties where she'd built her quiet, patient scheme. Away from the water. Away from anywhere a body was ever expected to wash up. Evelyn insisted on going alone. Maya refused to let her. They compromised the way they always had, since Evelyn was a young mother and Maya was a stubborn child who never once did what she was told the first time. Maya would wait in the car, close enough to call for help. Far enough to let her mother have this conversation on her own terms. Rebecca answered the door, already knowing. Evelyn could see it in her face before either of them said a word. Not shock, not confusion, just a tired, resigned recognition, like a woman finally putting down something heavy she'd been carrying for a very long time. You found me faster than I expected, Rebecca said. You didn't hide very well. I wasn't hiding from you. I didn't think you'd ever notice. Evelyn stepped inside without being invited. The house was sparse. Half-packed boxes near the door. A woman prepared to leave quickly, if she needed to. 4 women, Rebecca. Rebecca's jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. For that we found. Evelyn continued. How many are there really? Does it matter? It matters to them. Rebecca sat down slowly at her kitchen table, the same posture Daniel Reyes had folded into days earlier. The posture of someone who has been waiting, quietly, for the weight of this to finally catch up. You want to know why? I want to know how you slept at night. Rebecca almost laughed. Almost. The same way anyone sleeps who's spent their whole life watching people who had less than them get handed everything anyway. She told it plainly, without much performance left in her. Thomas had left her nothing when he died. Not out of cruelty, she admitted, just oversight, distance, the ordinary carelessness of a man who assumed his sister would always be fine on her own. She hadn't been fine. Not for years. She'd taken the processing job out of necessity, and somewhere in the tedium of closing out estates for people who'd actually died, she noticed something. How thin the verification really was. How easily a missing persons case, left to go cold in an underfunded coastal county, could quietly become a closed one. How rarely anyone came looking for the truth, once grief had already done the work of accepting a story. The first time had been almost an accident, a genuine cold case she'd simply nudged along faster than it should have gone, and taken a modest fee for her trouble from a distant relative eager to access an estate. After that, it stopped being an accident. It became a service. Quiet, efficient, reliable, sold to people who needed someone declared gone, an estate to unlock, a policy to collect, a name to disappear. Evelyn had simply been the one time she'd let personal history creep into professional practice. "You could have picked anyone," Evelyn said quietly. "Why me?" Rebecca finally looked up. "Because it was never going to just be paperwork with you. With the others, it was strangers. Numbers. Files. With you, it was supposed to mean something. I wanted you to know, somewhere, even if you never found out how, that Thomas's family was still owed something. That I hadn't just disappeared quietly the way everyone expected me to." Evelyn felt something in her chest that wasn't quite anger anymore. Something closer to grief for a woman who had turned 4 decades of resentment into a system for erasing other people. "You didn't take something from Thomas's family," Evelyn said. "You are Thomas's family. And you tried to bury the wrong sister-in-law to make a stranger's life insurance payout look clean." Rebecca didn't answer that. She didn't have to. The knock at the door came less than 10 minutes later. Maya, true to form, hadn't stayed in the car nearly as long as she'd promised. She'd called the number Patricia had quietly passed along 2 days earlier, not local police, but a state investigator who had been building a file of her own on a cluster of unresolved coastal disappearances, without yet realizing they were connected. Rebecca didn't run. She simply stood, smoothed the front of her shirt, and looked at Evelyn one last time. "I really am sorry it was you." "No," Evelyn said. "You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference." The investigation moved faster once Rebecca's name was attached to it. State investigators worked backward through 3 years of files, cross-referencing every case that had passed through the regional processing office where she'd once worked. Carroll and Whitfield was the first one they found.
Alive.
Living 2 counties over, under a name she'd quietly taken after a divorce she never bothered to file properly, a woman who had genuinely wanted to disappear once, years ago, and had no idea that disappearance had since been repackaged, sold, and turned into a fraudulent death certificate behind her back. She hadn't renewed a license, hadn't opened a new bank account, hadn't done anything that might have forced the 2 versions of her life to collide. She'd simply been fortunate enough never to need proof that she still existed. Linda Farrow wasn't as lucky. Investigators found records of a real drowning, 2 months after her case had already been closed under Rebecca's careful paperwork, an unrelated, unidentified body that had, for 3 years, been quietly filed away under someone else's name. A grave with the wrong woman's name on it. A family somewhere who had never been told the truth because no one had ever had a reason to look. The 4th woman was never found at all. Not alive. Not accounted for. Just a name in a file, and a silence no one could yet explain. Evelyn attended the hearing 3 months later. Rebecca didn't look at her once during the proceedings. Not out of shame, Evelyn suspected. Just exhaustion, the particular exhaustion of a person who has finally run out of paperwork to hide behind. Daniel Reyes testified against her in exchange for a lighter sentence of his own. He lost his notary license. He did not lose much else. Evelyn didn't feel satisfied watching either of them face what came next. She'd expected to. She'd spent months imagining this moment would feel like closure. Instead, it mostly just felt like paperwork of its own kind, necessary, overdue, and strangely hollow once it was finally done. 6 months after the morning she'd walked into the Department of Driver Services expecting nothing more than a new photo and a shorter line, Evelyn stood in that same building again. Same fluorescent lighting. Same tired hum of the air conditioning. A different clerk this time. Younger, cheerful, entirely unaware of what this particular renewal meant. "Good morning," the clerk said. "Renewing today?" Evelyn smiled. "Yes." The clerk scanned her license,
Typed.
waited, then smiled back, without a flicker of hesitation. All set, Mrs. Brooks. Have a good one. No red screen.
No supervisor.
No 2 words in bold letters across the top of a monitor. Just an ordinary Tuesday, handed back to her the same way it had been taken, quietly, on a computer screen, without anyone in the room fully understanding what had almost been lost. That evening, Maya's kids ran through Evelyn's kitchen while she pulled a peach cobbler out of the oven, the same one she'd promised the day this all began. Maya watched her from the doorway. "You okay?" she asked. Evelyn set the dish down carefully, steam curling up between them. "I keep thinking about Linda Farrow," she admitted. "Someone's mother. Buried under the wrong name for 3 years, and nobody even knew to be angry about it. And the 4th woman, whoever she was." Maya didn't have an answer for that. Neither of them did. Some things, Evelyn had learned, don't resolve themselves neatly just because the person responsible finally gets caught. Some absences just stay absences. Later, alone on the back porch, Evelyn watched the sun go down over her own ordinary yard, her own ordinary life, fully restored to her in every official sense that mattered. She thought about the 2 words that had once appeared on a stranger's monitor in bold red letters. Status. Deceased. And she thought about how close she'd come to never finding out how wrong those words were, not through any dramatic twist of fate, but through the sheer, boring luck of needing a new photo for a driver's license on an unremarkable Tuesday in September. Most people, she now understood, are only one small clerical error away from disappearing completely. The lucky ones simply never find out how close they came.